miss the fact that we're in a global pandemic at the moment that's had far-reaching consequences. The pandemic's also highlighted the failures of our quite antiquated abortion legislation, and called to attention sometimes the fragile access that people have to reproductive health care.
Women's understanding of safety doesn't necessarily privilege clinics and doctors, but is rooted in their desires and their needs and in their fears. And I think all of those needs and those desires and those fears are heightened under COVID-19, where their control over their lives is mediated through this epidemic, through this pandemic.
Is it good enough to do telemedicine safeguarding? And actually, I think there's increasing evidence that it is, in fact, a really, really good way of doing it. And you're actually getting to a much broader population than you would if you were insisting on women coming into a physical service.
Clients really love telemedicine. They state that it's convenient, they feel safe, and it's certainly something that has improved abortion care in general.
Many people are still subjected to protesters outside clinics or hospital units, and I feel very strongly that as a society we would not tolerate that for any other aspects of healthcare. So I don't know how it is tolerated for abortion care.
Which is obviously the lobbying in Parliament and bringing cases. You also got the crisis pregnancy services, and also importantly post-abortion services, because what's emerging is actually that the post-abortion services is where they do a lot of recruitment for people to then stand outside clinics and do other sorts of activities. And then you've got the public activism, and they are all interrelated.
A few weeks ago in Malta, Marlene Farrugia, who's an independent MP, presented a bill to decriminalise abortion. Now, legally, nothing's happened as a result of this, but there has been a really loud anti-choice response. And I want to look at some of the arguments that have been emerging as part of this response, because I think it's really interesting to see how the tactics in Malta are the same as the tactics in the US, as the tactics in the UK, as the tactics in Italy and everywhere else. There's a kind of a hegemonical structure to the strategies that are put in place by the antis.
I think that there are the three things that the anti-choice lot have got in abundance that maybe we don't have, which is money, branding, and they're buying into a misogynist narrative that already exists. So they're essentially, they're not going against anything that isn't already kind of pretty well part of our culture already. So all they need to do is just add things on top and tap into that. Obviously they're incredibly well funded.
One of the big pile of things that he has done that is he did to get elected. And also his vows to appoint judges that would overturn Roe versus Wade. And again, this is the kind of like the cynical nature of it that just, makes me so upset, is that I think that the religious right knows that he is not religious and he is just doing this to appease them, but they're fine with it because then they get their judges and they get their policies, right? So it's like, it's like, quite frankly, to me, a deal with the devil.
Talk about, don't look, even I said that wrong. Talk about abortion. Let's say the word, say it, what it is, talk about it. Just have your little groups, talk about it in a cultural context, in a religious context, in everywhere, and look at it for everyone, not just for a small minority who
coerce and control the lives of women. Their victims never really have control over their own bodies. And I think women experiencing domestic violence are routinely either pressured to become pregnant. Abusive men are known and have shown to sabotage birth control, use condoms inconsistently, and issue threats related to continuing and ending a pregnancy. And it doesn't really stop there, because rape in the context of domestic abuse can see women who have experienced trauma pregnant, isolated and trapped in a relationship that they don't want to be in. And when we think about those women in that circumstance, in my view, it's important to remember that abortion is still a crime in Scotland, England and Wales, and is only permitted in very specific circumstances with the requirement of 2 doctors to sign off the procedure. And no other medical procedure is subject to these conditions. There's no other area of medicine where scientific advances just simply get ignored because it's too controversial.
The right to protest, the right to just have that voice of dissent is something that was hard fought for, hard won, something that did not come easy at all.
From marginalized communities, in that it is always the most marginalized people who protest for the rights of everybody else. Every right we have has been won by marginalized communities in whichever way you want to look at it.
Us coming together and saying, my fight is your fight is my fight. We are together in this, and we are stronger when we stand together.
Abortion experiences of people of colour in the UK. According to a recent report, Black women in the UK are 4 times as likely to die in childbirth as their white counterparts, while women from Asian ethnic backgrounds face a 2-fold risk. Women living in the UK's most deprived areas are 3 times more likely to die than those in more affluent areas. Medical progress and development are strained within racist ideology, from eugenicist theories about the bodies of people of colour to forced contraception to even the experimentation on the bodies of people of colour without their consent.
People having access or gaining access to reproductive services. I'm a big believer that we're all one human race, and it doesn't matter where you're from, what colour you are. So it just saddens me, and as a Black woman myself, accessing reproductive services, I have felt that I'm judged, or I felt like I haven't had, the right information or enough information or support and care like my white friends have had. And I think we just need to be aware that racism is like an epidemic, it's a pandemic, it cuts through everything, including health, which is a human right. And I think unless we acknowledge that and talk about it, I don't think that's ever going to change, because I think we saw the race report that came out that said that there isn't any institutional racism in the UK, which is completely rubbish.
And looking at abortion, we approach it from a point of care. We don't use choice because we feel that, or I feel that it simplifies, it's a simple way to identify oneself as supporting abortion, but it can be assumptive that people having abortions always get to make the choice to terminate their pregnancies. And we know that for a large portion of people, abortion is not a choice due to health status, racism, socioeconomic status, and a whole other number of intersecting life and social circumstances.
Of the world, colonialism has had sort of a lasting legacy on all our societies, right? I say that it interrupted our ability to form the kind of world that we wanted to live in, and what we've been left with is a legacy of colonialism that we're trying to figure out, of which, a lot of things are imposed in that. So when we think about, abortion rights, the women's rights, the sexual and reproductive rights, and lots of other parts of the world in which colonialism happened, you would see that it's, in most cases, is quite regressive, right? It's in line with some of the attitudes and presumptions that were held in, well, I said this country, but I'm actually in Ghana, in the UK, very, very long time ago. And these are the legacies that we are continuing to deal with.